haven't seen it play out on the front pages of the papers, in Nigeria at least.
Well, it's a challenge from the French policy of assimilation.
That's right.
And Italy does not have a concomitant policy. And the exodus across North Africa into Europe is a challenge for all of them, especially Italy and Spain.
That's right.
Those are the footprints. Editorial.
Editorial today is taken from the Daily Independent newspaper, and it's at page 16. The headline is Nigeria, 200 million and still growing. And the editorial says, among others, that it concedes that a large, healthy and productive population could be an asset where basic infrastructure is provided and corruption is reduced to the barest minimum so that resources can achieve high development returns. But these do not detract from the serious adverse effect of uncontrolled population growth on development efforts. Many who are prone to raising large families are either illiterate or belong to the lower economic strata. This highlights the value of expanding the education net.
Well, the editorial is drawing a parallel between nations with a very huge population and also a huge population of poverty levels. The editorial is citing 5 nations: China, India, Nigeria, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. And the argument is that if you use China as an example, China has succeeded in reducing its poverty level from 62% to about 12.5%. India succeeded from 54% to 33%. However, recent statistics from Nigeria Bureau of Statistics indicated that Nigeria has about 87 million people living in poverty. That is, people who are earning less than $1.9 a day. So the editorial is recommending strict population control as a way of an economic management. And it says Nigeria population, which in 1960 was 42.1 million, has now grown in 2018 to an estimation of about 198. And this, we are told, if it is not controlled, by the year 2030 or thereabout, Nigeria's population could be about the 4th in the world. And so it is recommending measures that include serious campaign on population control, and that the federal, state, and local government should adopt policies that relate to contraceptive as well as child spacing and a way of limiting expansive families.
Mayo, that's, of course, you know, we've discussed the population issues on Good Morning Nigeria. You've also expressed your views while reviewing the headlines. It's becoming a major challenge, a demographic challenge that we are facing. 198 million, and you find that you need to provide more houses, more schools, more hospitals, and so on and so forth. Indeed, one graphic way of looking at it is to say, look, what was Nigeria's population in year 2006 when we had a census? And what is Nigeria's population today? If you look at the numbers, the number of persons that have, you know, that have been born into the Nigerian system, if you look at the population figure from 2006 to now, is more than the population of South Africa.
That is very critical. But there's a positive side to that population. A larger part of that population is quite young. Yes. And that is a productive population. So if the population can be put to productive use, it will turn to be an asset. All right.
Put them to productive use, Bayo.
Yes.
That's what we are hearing in the campaign hostings. Bayo Atoyebe, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's still Good Morning Nigeria, and our topic for discussion is 2019 electioneering and the Nigerian economy. To set the tone for the discussion, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent, Abdul Malik Adio.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 8 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
Sore throat, it's often caused by bacteria and viruses. Feels like they're having a party. You need Strepsils. It soothes the pain, plus it fights the germs with 2 germ-killing actives. Double power in 1 lozenge. Bye-bye sore throat. Take Strepsils.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
We are feeding 9.2 million children every single day in 26 states as part of our school feeding program. We are giving 2 million petty traders a trader money loan. You see the way they are getting very angry about trader money. When you take care of the poor people, only those who are wicked and evil will complain. The trader is the bottom of the rung in our commercial value chain. He's the most hardworking, the petty trader. Some of them, all their inventory is not up to 2,000 naira. Well, I met a woman who was selling her pomo in the market here in Yanya market here. I asked her, how much is this pomo? She says maybe it's about 3,000. And then I asked her, how do you make profit? How much profit do you make? She didn't even answer me. She just pointed to another woman whose pomo was in a little bowl to show me that, look, I'm a big player here, despite my 3,000. So the government decided, with the approval of Senate at the time, we should go ahead and do this, because that's a part of our program. A very important part of our program is that we must give credit to traders, we must give credit to those who are doing small businesses so that they can improve their businesses, so that they can employ more people, so that they also can prosper and our nation can prosper. This is the reason why we're going around doing the trader money and also what we call market money all over the country. 2 million petty traders. And we're going to continue to do so because our people deserve a better life.
Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live from Abuja. And to set the tone for our discussion, Hamid Adeo has our backgrounder on 2019 electioneering and the Nigerian economy. We'll be right back.
Because he has the character, he has the honesty, he has the transparency.
It is another electioneering year with growing anxiety in the political arena and its attendant consequences on the state of the economy. In less than a month, 91 political parties will slug it out at the polls for different political offices. Experts say whatever happens in the political arena is bound to affect the financial market positively or negatively. Feelers from the stock markets indicate that investors have lost a whopping sum of 729 billion naira in the last 3 months of decline linked to election anxiety, extraneous factors, and profit-taking, since the sustaining market fundamentals and upbeat economic data fail to support a much-expected healthy stock price recovery. Investors and traders, who are mostly foreigners, are concerned about the political risk associated with the 2019 elections. The fear of unknown may have forced many of them to prefer to sit on the fence and watch as things unfold. Expert says one way out of the possible backlash on the economy is to encourage quick passage of the 2018 appropriation bill by the National Assembly and for government to adopt pragmatic strategies that will guarantee peaceful campaigns, ensure a robust security arrangement to keep fiscal policy on track, boost investment, and sustain market rebound to restore investors' confidence for economic outfit for the benefit of the citizenry. Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will share more light on the 2019 elections and the economy shortly.
All right, now joining us here in the Abuja studios to discuss this issue in further detail, would like to welcome Niyi Akinseju. Of course, it's a regular face now. Good Morning Nigeria. He's a financial and investment analyst. Niyi, good to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Yushwao Aliu, who is an economist. Yushwao, pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you very much, and Good Morning Nigeria.
And from our Lagos studio, we have Mr. Ken Ukoha, the President, National Association of Nigerian Traders. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. We also have in the Lagos studio Mr. John Chukwu, a financial analyst. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Gentlemen, once again, pleasure to have you with us on the program. Let's begin. Charity, they say, begins at home. So let's begin with the guests who are here with us at the Abuja headquarters studios. First, with Niyi, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you were on this program discussing the economic outlook for Nigeria in 2019. Right now, it is clear that this is the thick of the electioneering season. There were concerns in the past as to the slow pace of electioneering, but here we are, electioneering is at full blast, as it were. What is it that you are reading with regard to the, shall we say, the cascading effects of the electioneering on aspects of the economy?
Yeah, well, if I take the word of phrase cascading, I won't compare to what we used to experience. And if we give literary meaning to cascading, I think there's cascading in recession in the current environment. And I think there's an evolving political ecosystem, you know, in our environment, as it were. For some of us, it's appreciated because a major concern coming into 2019 was an expectation of huge electionary expenses that would, you know, lead to increase in inflation rates. And of course, everybody now understands the essential consequences of increased inflation rates. And especially when we start to compare to where we are coming from. In 2015, I remember at this time, of that period, dollar was the currency of choice, and it eventually reflected even on the inflationary rates. 2014 ended at 14% inflationary rate. By March, April of that year, inflationary rate had gone up to 9.3, 9.4%, more than 140 basis points, and that tells you that within 120 days, so much money had gone into the system, and it had impacted pricing. And when it impacts pricing, of course, it will impact the consumers down there. So what we are seeing now is a measured, deliberate policy by government to reduce the impact of money, in this election. I've always told people personally that the currency of campaign should be goodwill. Yes, there are basic expenses that would have to come in. You can't go beyond it. Marketing, communication, for instance, advertisement and all that. But we spend more money. Nigeria, historically, the Nigerian politicians spend more money on extra political things. We pay cash for support, and we pay cash for votes. Cash for support in terms of moving people from one point to the other to show your support. And of course, when it comes to the election period, you pay cash to voters to vote for you. Now, these are the things that bond the system, because you pump in errant money, into the economy. And of course, the first attraction of those money is a basic consumption. And that also drives liquidity in the system. So what I'm trying to say essentially is that we have a government now that had deliberately reduced the significance of money in politics. And I think we should congratulate the government for that. And the major thing really is also closing, because when you are talking money in politics, you have an incumbent. What the incumbent will do is to encourage ministries, departments, and agencies to give money to political supporters. What those outside government will do is to launder money solely from somewhere into the system. So you have a 6 months period that is principally dedicated to errant money in the system.
Sorry, what did you say? Errant? Or?
Yeah, very errant money.
Yeah,
money
that's just flying around.
Just flying around. No function.
All right. Nigerian Kinsinjo, thanks a lot for your opening salvo. Let's bring in Yusuf Aliyu. What is your take on let's say now, the economics of 2019 electioneering?
You see, when electioneering is mentioned, first of all, we have to go back to our Electoral Act, because the Act specifies what to be done in respect of funding electioneering process. But the economy as it is also is always expecting injections into the economy. But like rightly pointed out by Mr. Nee, errant money that is not productive in the first instance. So when you go to the economy, you realize, looking back to 2014, for instance, as a case study, you find a situation there was substantial withdrawal of about $2.6 billion from our foreign reserve to the economy, and which also triggered so much about inflation at that period. So the economy now, it is true that based on Electoral Act, there is certain amount at which presidential candidate is expected to spend. And there is also a limit at which, for instance, even the donations made. In fact, funding election in an economy is a necessary tool for that economy to move. But doing the right thing with the funding is also what matters. So, obviously, Nigerian economy as it is today, yes, we are coming out of recession, and when coming out of recession is pronounced, you are expecting a lot of negative and positive tendencies that will be attached to the economy. One of it is the relationship of the economy with the international oil production. Now, our production level has been cut down because of many factors. The OPEC is struggling itself. When OPEC is struggling, the Nigerian economy will be struggling. The fiscal responsibilities of the commitment of the government is also being affected. Looking at, for instance, the electioneering of 2018 has to do with a budget of 2018. And now there is also tension about the 2019 budget, and also attached to it is another war, which is between the labor economics and the economy itself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joshua. We're now moving to Lagos. My question is for Mr. John Chukwu, a financial analyst. Moving out of the recession, a biting recession that in the last 25 years has not happened in this country. We've just been moving out of it. The polity is tense and politicking is going on. A lot of people say there's no cash flow. I'm going to ask you this question. What is the economic outlook for 2019 before and after the elections?
Thank you. I think if we have to look at the economic outlook for 2019, we have to look at what will happen in the next 3 months. A lot of factors that will shape the performance of the economy will be dependent on what happens between February and March. But interestingly, this year is going to be largely dominated by political activities. So I want to believe that in terms of economic outlook, we're going to see relatively weak economic performance in 2019. And this is premised on several factors. One, we are going to see a dominance of monetary policies and some fiscal policies being in abeyance. Yesterday, the National Assembly started considering the 2019 budget. And they had to say that there were mistakes that they had to send back to the ministries to correct. You're likely going to see that this 2019 budget will not be passed into law until the end of the first quarter of this year, possibly towards the end of the second quarter of this year. So the fiscal tool that the government needs to stimulate the economy will not be available until after the elections. Right now, a lot of people involved in political activities are in the field campaigning. So you're also not seeing those who will drive implementation of economic policies, they on the ground driving those economic policies. So this year we should see that all things being equal, the performance of the economy will be dependent on whether we're going to have a free and fair election, whether all the parties involved in the election will accept the outcome of that election, and how quickly the government will set about forming a government after the election.
All right, gentlemen, stick with you in Lagos. Before we bring in Ken Ukoha, before Ken Ukoha comes, John, I would like you to speak to what you think about the economics of electioneering, which is in full bloom right now.
Well, if I have to take it from a macroeconomic perspective, what happens is that you will see that different people at different structures of the economy are affected separately, differently from electioneering activities, because we're talking about the economics of electioneering. You look at the artisans, those at the lower rung of the economic ladder, they are the major beneficiaries of economics of elections. We've seen a lot of itinerant workers getting paid on a daily basis. We've seen those who had no jobs who have now become political jobbers. We are going to see the parties recruit agents and returning of agents to supervise their own elections. So you will see a lot of people who were ordinarily unemployed getting into temporary employment. So you see cash flow that will go to that section. Then for the structured aspect of the economy, like in the construction companies, they are likely going to see slowdown in payment from government because government resources are finite. So what will happen is government will move a lot more resources to attend to politically related activities instead of attending to those things that would drive economic growth. I want to see that. So in effect, you're going to see some level of transfer of wealth, though at temporary level, from the organized businesses to the informal sectors of the business, those who are printing T-shirts, posters, they will not be beneficial. Those who are even paid to go and paste the posters will not be beneficial of the shift in economic activities.
All right, John Chukwu, thank you very much. Ken Ukoha, please take up from where John just left off. What is your perspective on what is playing out with regard to the economic spin-off of the electioneering season?
Very much, Kingsley. I think what we are noticing this period is that unlike previous times when we had elections, funds were here and there, mobilized by politicians. People were giving money, and people were getting money freely. There is a squeeze at this time. In fact, the only people who are getting a little cash in their pockets are the informal sector, food vendors, for instance, who are there where the campaigns are going on. They are feasting on them, and then, people who are hawking drinks around campaign areas, carpenters who are mounting the podiums, decorators who are decorating, and these are the few people. But just yesterday, I had a meeting with our leaders in Lagos, and one of them was complaining. I said, oh, please, sir, we are not getting funds that we were expecting. I said, where were you expecting the funds from? He said, from politicians. They are not buying things. The only things they are getting, the only sector that is getting money now is the printing sector, subsector. And they print T-shirts, they print posters, they print handbills. But the money is not. I said, those who are selling, things that relate to printing are also making money. He said, yes, but money is not coming to some of them. I said, okay. I think that one thing that is happening is that we need to also look forward to the season where we are now. And I say this without sense of humility. The rains, there are going to be early rains this year. And in the next few months, agriculture should be setting in. One concern should be, after the election, what will be the security situation of the country? Would farmers go to farm? 1. 2, would there be budget to enable farming, agriculture sector get off? Because the budget is still under consideration. 3, would the people be secured enough to move freely and to have the confidence to go into the markets? So where this does not happen, what you are going to see is that people are also going to, even the informal sector, they're also going to hold up their money. It may be good for the economy in the sense that you're not pushing a lot to the economy, but in terms of redistribution of, goods and services, there might be some lull, and that will not be the best for the economy. Thank you.
Still talking about artisans, people in the trade and all that you've mentioned as a president of the National Association of Traders in Nigeria, Nigerian traders, you said it has affected the flow of money and they have been complaining. Is that a new tide towards stability in this country economically? To Mr. Ukoha.
Very honest with you. I think it's a new thing. People majority may not be seeing it as a good omen for the country, in the sense that, we have a situation at hand now where the bulk of money is not being pushed out to the street, and therefore people, in quote, are not seeing that they're enjoying the money of politicians. But what is happening is that economically, we wouldn't have such inflation tendencies that would have arisen. Number 2 is that there is there's a limit to attraction to politics. And number 3 is that people are subconsciously coming back to their senses that, look, politics is not all about money. So money politics will now be going slowly down. And I have also seen a situation where organizations like ours, for instance, as we speak today, we are having campaigns in different states, in Katsina, in Benue State, in Adamawa, in Taraba, where we're campaigning, saying, look, people, we have our manifesto, Farmers Manifesto. We also have our Traders Charter of Demands that we are giving to politicians. And so we do not want to vote parties. We are voting people who are committed to helping, to assisting us, to facilitating our trade, to facilitating our economy. And this is what we're doing. But the money bags are not seeing that traders, the informal sector, is, not picking the money issue very strongly. So money politics is going down. So in the subconscious nature of the people, I think that it's dwindling now. Thank you.
All right, Ken Okoha, thank you very much. Let's return to our Abuja studios. My question is going first again to Niyi Akinseju. Niyi, is it possible that perhaps we are, in terms of evaluating the cash flow for the 2019 electioneering period, we are probably exaggerating the scenario now that there isn't errant money, as you very appropriately described it? What is happening at the subnational level? Yes, in the past, it was always that federal money, of so-called federal might, including brute force and so on and so forth, would trickle down to the states and then to the money, to the henchmen at the state level and the local government level. But is it possible that some states, with very little oversight, are perhaps also you know, getting their, I don't know, are they financing the system?
Of course,
yes.
Of course. The character of the federal government, as it were, is different, you know, from so many of the subnationals, the states. My SNAP survey, you know, kind of tells me that it's not the same, you know, at the level of the subnational. It's unfortunate, but I think with time, it's about modeling. There's already an established structure in our federal system, where the federal government leads, you know, in terms of discipline and philosophy. So it's usually what the federal government does, you know, that the states would over time, you know, align with. Even in current times, it's still not as it used to be in the subnationals. You still see some form of discipline. Some of my friends will call it the demonetization of the process. And we are excited by it because there are so many potentials out there that are discouraged, you know, by this huge monetization of the process. And for me, we will still need to go further to create that stakeholders mentality in the average Nigerian mind, such that it is what you give to the political party, you know, that will be your stake in that party. And I think the Electoral Act 2010 has taken care of all this. In terms of equity and all that, no individual or organization should contribute more than ₦1 million into a candidate's purse and all that. So if we still look at what the subnationals are doing, it is one that is disciplined, but usually the money still go from the federal to the states for disbursement. And we can start talking, even now there's the case of Fayoshe, the federal government versus Fayoshe, you know, where...
That matter is sub judice.
Yes, it's sub judice. Okay. All right. But what I'm trying to say essentially is that there is a reformation, you know, of our political ecosystem. I think this is a path to take. And it's already with what we are seeing in the last 2 weeks, when President Buhari started his own campaign, we can also see strong momentum, and it is strategic. Why do I say strategic? The other party, the PDP, started this campaign about 2 months ago. In the last 2-3 weeks, the ruling party started its own and had covered more grounds, you know, from what we are seeing. And we can also see the momentum going into the election in another 3 weeks or thereabout. And the people have not lost their heads. This time, 2015, we all lost our heads, you know, looking for where the money is, who is sharing money, who is sharing dollars.
I didn't know you were looking for the money, Niyi.
Who will not look for dollars?
All right, okay, Niyi Akinseju, thanks a lot.
Yes, with many political alignment and realignment, are there dimensions of the campaign that impact on investors' confidence, with so many investors sitting on the fence? What's your take on that?
It is normal in democracies when looking for opportunities by electioneering, you have to sell yourself within and outside the economy. And that is why we have seen a change now. prior to this, in 2015, it was the same president that was going around the world trying to tell them what he has for the economy. And now what is on ground is the opposition are going out of the nation to try to sell their manifesto. But in my own, when you look critically, I will add that the structure is changing. And since it is changing, how? You look at, for instance, a policy of government on TSA. It has helped a lot to tell investors that we are now more serious about our finances. And if you are serious about your finances, you will be serious about others' finances. That is one. Two, even at the party structure level, we have seen, even though it has been argued that we can't see money flying, errand money, but so much funds has gone into the political parties. We have seen how gubernatorial candidate in a state, you have about 20, each paying 20 million to a party for a form. So there was so much money that transferred from the politician to the main political party. Probably maybe the contention now, the two contending political parties, one is headed by an economist. The other party was headed by an expert in commerce. So we are still looking at, you cannot market the economy when voting is in process. You market before and after. So we are hoping that probably after the transition, we will have more ground to market the economy for investors to come. But lukewarm attitude is natural because of the slow process. But there are indigenous forces and exogenous forces. Godwin Emefiele, the CBN governor, highlighted that the global trend, economic trend, is slowing down, and that has to affect all economies in the world. The trade tension between the Chinese and the Americans is also slowing process with the Asian stock market, including the Nigerian stock exchange. So it's obvious technical issues are taking shape technically.
All right, Yushab, thank you very much. Let's return to Lagos. And John Chukwu, a financial analyst, the question is coming to you. Let's climb upstairs on the investment ladder. Earlier, you were talking about the benefits that those who play at the lower rungs of the economic ladder are getting from the electioneering season. But upstairs, what is happening to investors' sentiment at this time? We had seen quite some run on the stock market, but what else is playing out? And measure that also against occurrences on the international plane.
Okay, just a little point of correction. You are throwing away the son in my name is Johnson Chukwu. Okay, back to the question. If you look at, for instance, the investment climate, we've seen a situation where investors are sitting on the fence because of heightened political risk, which is expected. Because if you just cast your mind back to what has happened in the capital market, in the Nigerian stock exchange in the past 3 years, in 2016, when the economy contracted by 1.58%, the market only lost 6.7%. By 2017, the economy grew by 0.82%. The capital market gained 42%. Last year, the economy still grew by an average of, expected an average of 1.75, 1.8%, because if you look at the 3 quarters growth, 1.95, 0.5, 1.5, and 1.81%, 3 quarters of last year. But you saw that the market lost more than 17%. What does that tell us? It simply means that because of the heightened political risk, investors have pulled out of the market, waiting to have some clarity after the elections. That also applies to corporate organizations. You realize that apart from a few sectors like the banking sector, a lot of corporate organizations' performance in terms of profitability have also slowed down. What is happening is that we see a slowdown in consumption. We see a slowdown in confidence of investors to go into long-term investments while they are not certain of the outcome of the elections. Just like my colleagues there in Abuja said, at periods of heightened political risk, investors would rather hold back their investment in what we call variable income assets. That is, those things whose returns are not certain, and rather play in the fixed income market. So what we are seeing today is that a lot of local investors, including the fund manager like the PFAs, are buying a lot more of federal government debt instruments, federal government bonds, federal government treasury bills, and likewise, private investors are also buying up bills. But for foreign investors, what they have done, most of them have pulled out of the market and waiting to see the outcome of the election. In effect, what will determine the performance of this economy this year will be largely how the elections go. If we have a free and fair election, if the outcome of that election is accepted by all the parties, we should see a return of investors. That will also need to be supported by some modifications or changes in the current policy regime, economic policy regime.
What exactly are we looking at in terms of the economic policy regime that we have? The government has already outlined all of that in its economic recovery and growth plan on the one hand, plus the highlights of the 2019 appropriation, assuming there are no changes to the policy framework.
Well, if there are no changes to the policy framework, which I strongly believe that any government that gets into power in May 2019 will have to modify, we are likely going to continue to see relatively slow growth. You recall that our growth rate is currently below 2%. Even IMF that adjusted our growth rate from 2.3% to 2%, but our population is growing about 2.6 to 3%. So in reality, the country cannot afford to continue with the current growth rate. We must do things that will up the growth rate. But assuming there's no change in policy environment, one of the things that the government needs to address is the level of insecurity in the northern part of the country, which has slowed down the GDP growth rate in the agricultural sector. Remember that agriculture accounts for 29% of Nigeria's GDP, but the agricultural sector is now growing at 1.91% third quarter 2018. You need to have that sector grow at in the neighborhood of 6% to take more people out of poverty. Agriculture accounts for about 36% of Nigerian employees, working population. So if the agricultural sector is growing at a faster rate, then you're going to see a lot more people out of poverty. Unfortunately, the security crisis we have in the northeast, north central, and northwest has dampened agricultural activities and slowed down the growth in that sector. But having said that, I also think it's necessary I mention that, look, it's almost certain that when the government gets power to power in 2019, there will be certain changes in the policy environment. One of which I expect is that the government is going to take out the subsidy on petroleum products. The country cannot afford to continue to spend 1.4 trillion naira on petroleum subsidy when we are not funding health care, we are not funding critical road infrastructure, transport infrastructure. And again, the government must also recognize that it does not have the capacity to fund the infrastructure development we need in this country from budgetary allocation. The government must modify its funding strategy to attract private capital to fund some of this infrastructure if we have to faster our growth in the next couple of years.
Okay, coming to Mr. Ukoha, what is the impact of electioneering so far on trade, capital flows, diaspora transfers, and economic policies? What is your assessment vis-a-vis foreign demand investment vis-a-vis the election? What is your assessment on that, Mr. Ukoha?
All of us are of the consensus that investors are watching for now. And any reasonable investor must take a watch, wait and see what is going to happen after March. One, who wins? What are the policy environments? And then what kind of policies, trade policies, economic policies will be coming in? And the same thing applies to even petty traders and importers. There's no reasonable importer that would go out now at this particular moment to import hugely. And I can tell you that there's a dwindling effect. There's a drawdown on imports. And that will also apply to the revenue generated by customs. And I think if you check the books, you will also see that it's reducing, gradually. Until after March, then people will have the confidence again to move out to bring in things. But on the other side, the investment environment, I think, is a bit more credible. It's getting more credible. Credible in the sense that apart from what is happening in the insecurity, which my colleague Johnson has talked about here, the insecurity in the northwest, in the northeast, and then in the north central, herdsmen, farmers crisis going on, which demoralizes investment in the agriculture sector, which is very key, and I totally agree with him. But then in the environment, the security the economic outlook, shows some credible sense in the fact that if you look at the TSA, which my colleague over there mentioned earlier, people are saying, oh, look, the country is getting a bit more serious. Then if you look at the issue of, the issue between central bank and MTN of this world, people are saying, oh, come on, that means Nigeria is getting a bit serious if they can stand on their rule. And, investors feel that the rules are very key. Very key. Adapting to the rules, ensuring that you implement the rules, whoever, not minding who's God, us is being God, I think is very key. And then few other, issues like, the enabling business environment, ease of doing business, those architecture are doing a lot to, redeem and, reverberate the kind of confidence that investor would have in a country. But if you look at the lower end of the ladder, business is going on, although on a slow pace. And during the elections, you are going to notice more of the slowness of businesses, because people are going to look at their head first, how to secure their head. And people are also saving towards that. So they are not pushing out a lot of money now. People are saving to find out what is going to happen after the election. Even the traders themselves. You don't see a lot of them going to pack goods and store in the warehouse as it were before. So they are being very careful. In fact, I know many traders who have gone to the bank to lodge in their money. No, we're not traveling. We're not going to, buy goods for now. Let the warehouse just wait. Let's see what is going to happen after March. And so that tells you the kind of environment that we are going to have between now and March in the economy. And then after March, there is going to be, depending on the security outlook at that time, there's going to be a kind of speed, because everybody is going to come out at the same time. If we have peaceful election, you will see that, within that 1 month, thereabout, there is going to be a lot of money coming in, because people who have kept their money are going to pool. It is the bank that will be thinking of, how to, handle such issue. Thank you.
All right, Colonel Kohart, thank you very much. Just before we go on this short break, while we are still on the issue of traders and how they are responding to the electioneering season, tell us something more about the concerns that your members are expressing with regard to security. Are they concerned? Does security factor in their business decisions? And if so, how?
Yeah, Kingsley, this is quite normal. If you recall, in 2014, when elections were taken off, a lot of people, businessmen and women, had to leave where they were living and run down to their villages for a hide, because it was not predictable, and the security was not also given any assurance. So a lot of people died at that particular time, even when they were traveling. However, at this time, people are looking at the fact that money politics have not really taken over as it were then. And therefore, there's some level of calmness. But that does not take away the fact that people are being very, very careful in, number one, investing their fund. Two, where they are going to. You can see that those who are, in the trading community hardly have time to go out for electioneering campaigns and all of that. So I think that what is happening now is that everybody is watching. watching. There's a bit of the confidence, and I said it earlier, bit of the confidence. That confidence is resonating from the fact that money is not taking over as it used to be. And therefore, things are a bit calm. But people are just watching. Thank you.
All right, Ken and Johnson Chukwu in Lagos, as well as usual, and Nii Akinsuji with us here in the Abuja studios. Gentlemen, let's take a pause now. We'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mom to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live from Abuja. We start with our tweets on our discussion 2019 elections and the economy. First is Akimboyega said we should expect the value of our naira to be unstable and investors to delay investment in Nigeria as we move closer to elections. Also, the recent rise in inflation will have negative effects on disposable income, which can harm our fragile economy if not given urgent attention.
And Shakiru Raufu tweets, the election period is a carnival. People singing and dancing, sellers and buyers, jobs are generated. These help to improve the economy.
And Dele Major B says, no doubt, whatever happens during and after the 2019 general elections is bound to affect the market economy positively or negatively. Thereby, politicians are warned to desist from actions and utterances that could negatively impact the nation's fragile democracy and even the fragile economy. Kesley.
And still from Dele Major B, it says, unlike before, investors and traders who are mostly foreigners are concerned about the political risks associated with the 2019 elections. The fear of the unknown may have forced many of them not to invest in our economy. We must get it right to attract investors after the elections. Those are the tweets we want to take in the meantime. And let's return to our guests. Niyi Akinsiji and indeed the other guests in Lagos and here with us in the Abuja studios. Of course, after the elections, there will be the economy. And there will be the country. Now, what are you hearing and seeing with regard to the economic messaging content of the electioneering? What message is going out there, particularly to the key economic players who can help catalyze the economy? Yes, at the lower rungs, we are seeing people running around getting T-shirts and so on and all that, producing T-shirts and other specialized forms of advertising. But what is the key economic messaging content, once again, if I repeat that, that we can discern from the economy? Are there contrasting positions? Are there issues that we say, look, this might be worrisome? I'm asking this question against the background that, assuming there is no discernible economic messaging at the moment to key economic investors, what would that mean for the second quarter of the economy? Me first.
Personally, I am bullish, about post-election in 2019. And it all comes from what I see as a well-choreographed effort by the federal government. I think sometimes in October, November, there was a clear circular to banks by the CBN, warning banks to be wary of money laundering and all that. And the EFCC was also in tandem with this position too. And then I see this disciplined, conscious comportment by the federal government. And you also see an equal conduct from the opposition or even the main opposition party. So where you expect that, okay, if the federal government or the ruling party was not doing what has been the history, the opposition party will use it as an opportunity, but there is an alignment in that outlook. Now going into post, and that will be the second quarter 2019, I am expecting a peaceful election. I have followed what INEC is doing. And prelude to that, I have been a student of elections in Nigeria over time. I realize if we do head count of violence, in our history and compare to now, you see a huge difference, pre-election violence. Though without an empirical analysis or study of this, you can still establish the fact that money was a major trigger for this violence, And so going forward, if we are seeing a reduction in this, it is likely to cascade into the main election and post-election. If we are able to have a managed, credible election, it's likely we have a more attractive economic environment going into second quarter 2019. Already, we see a movement back by some foreign investors into the capital markets. I mean, it's reading in the January figures already, in the late December figures and the early January figures. And I am expecting also that there will be emphasis on agriculture, because that is the message of the ruling party. It has been the major message ferreted out of the RGP. So going forward, the president, in his different engagement with the public, had said is going to continue with what it's doing, at the level of agriculture, of the economy and security. The opposition party had also consciously engaged the investment and business community. And so I think on the two sides, economy is a major concern. But of course, approaches are different. So while the opposition is thinking of absolute privatization, of many, and many of government-owned enterprises, and of course, talking of free float of the economy. Some of us who have a socialist outlook to management of the economy, will disagree. And I think the CBN governor also disagreed, to a free float of the economy. So going forward,
free float of the Naira.
Yes, free float of the Naira. So going forward, I think we're going to have, I am bullish. I have heard the INEC chairman spoke. I have read the regulation, the electoral regulation, and I think if appropriate, if the citizen itself are properly competent, we'll have a credible election.
I just, before we bring in Yushua here, you talked about a couple of items, and I would like Johnson Chukwu in Lagos to also respond to this, because he had mentioned it earlier. But Johnson, taking from this point, in terms of the economic content in the messages that we are hearing on the campaign, on the hustings, what can we make of this? Earlier, you were talking about the fact that, look, the subsidy regime is becoming unsustainable. One of the presidential candidates, in fact, says that one of the ways that he will fund education is, to tap into the 1.4 trillion naira subsidy that is available. Another presidential candidate says, listen, NNPC will be on the blocks, for privatization. Now, what will this mean in terms of signaling to investors on the higher rungs of the investment ladder?
Kingsley, interestingly, the two major political parties in the contest for this election do not really have so much divergence in their policies. Maybe the timing of what they have said. If you listen to the debate of the vice presidential candidates on the issue of subsidy, the vice president, Professor Osibanjo, said that the burden is quite huge, and it's not something the government can continue to absorb in the long run. But that he believes there will be a phased approach to it. But what I can tell you here is that it is not politically expedient for anybody in government to take out the subsidy today. After the election, maybe you are going to deal with a phased exit from that subsidy regime. But reality is that what we are doing here, we are subsidizing consumption. We should be subsidizing production. There is nothing wrong with subsidy anywhere in the world. Countries subsidize critical sectors of the economy to stimulate investment in those sectors. But the challenge is that when you subsidize consumption, and that consumption is not even produced locally, you actually basically sending away productive activities, economic resources to other countries. That's what we say, basic thing we say in economics, that import is a leakage, export is an injection. When you import goods, you're actually having capital flow out of your country, particularly foreign exchange. So in reality, we are subsidizing what we're importing when we could have, within our value chain, trap that productive activity because we produce the crude. So in reality, I do not imagine that any of the parties will sustain the subsidy in the long run. The two parties may have different approaches to how to exit the subsidy, but it is given that in the medium to long term, Nigeria will take out the petroleum product subsidy. That's one factor. The other factor that they have has come up in the course of their campaign is the issue of deregulation of the currency or free floating of the currency. What I think will happen, if you ask my opinion, is that the free float of a currency is a destination in terms of currency management. But it is not something you can do the next day. It's not something you can just switch off because there are certain conditions that must be present before you float your currency, one of which is multiplicity of your foreign exchange earning sources. Today, we are only earning foreign exchange from crude sales. I mean, major export proceeds of the country coming from crude sales. About 80% of our foreign exchange earnings coming from crude sales. So, in reality, the first thing any government would do is to try to diversify our export earnings. Let's start from the low-hanging fruit, the issue of improving the value chain in the agricultural sector and exporting some semi-refined or semi-processed agricultural products. That way we have multiplicity, improved sources of foreign exchange earnings. When you have multiplicity of foreign exchange earnings, it becomes easy for you to float your currency. Like I said, that's a destination, but there has to be a certain precondition that will lead you to that destination. What they may do is to introduce additional modifications on the foreign exchange management. We've seen a lot of modifications in the current regime. If you remember, in 2014, the central bank introduced the investor exporters window, March 2014, which attracted, March 2016, sorry, March 2016, which attracted a lot more capital into the economy and helped to stabilize the foreign exchange market. Investors are looking for liquidity in the FX market, so that when they want to exit, they can easily take their money out. If you have restrictions or bottlenecks to that exit, they stay back. But I think, give and take, whoever takes over in May 2019 will introduce some modifications to our current economic policies that will lead to faster growth of the economy. We can't continue with a less than 2% growth. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a 3% population growth rate. And it's not magic that we are seeing more and more people pushing into poverty, irrespective of how the economy is growing. We need to grow this economy at the minimum in the range where Ghana is growing. 2000 to 2018, Ghanaian economy grew at an average of 6.7%. So Nigeria can do better than that. And I think if we are setting the policy indicators for the government, our approach will be that we need to do everything we can to attract private capital into the economy so that we will boost our economic growth rate.
Okay, Mr. Uko raised some pertinent issues when he answered my question earlier about government stand on importation, actually. And no flow of money going out, import is not coming in. Do you think it is good for the local manufacturers in Nigeria? Is it an advantage to them?
Yeah, honestly speaking, you don't expect the manufacturers to be at a boom when importation is at a boom. What it does is to stifle the local economy, local production, because of the severe competition that is attracted. And in that respect, what we feel should be done is for Nigeria to, consistently tackle the menace of smuggling, the menace of, unbridled, importation, and the influx of goods, especially those that we have substitutes, local substitutes, alternatives here. And thanks to the CBN, I hear that they want to increase the number of goods and items that cannot benefit from, the foreign currency, from 41 to another additional 8 items to be placed on that block. And I think, weighing that, of course, I know that a lot of people were angry with that, but it's helped in also stabilizing the economy at a certain stage. And it also helped ensuring the manufacturing sector. So if this is added now, you will also see that, monumentally, gradually, we can also be having the resistance to capital flight and then reducing what we, consume from abroad. I think we also need to strengthen any government that comes in now should also look towards strengthening the industrial policy of the nation. And also having the people, letting the people have a bond with such government. Going back to, and I'm sure you're going to permit me, going back to the earlier question that my colleague Johnson addressed, I think we also need to have a monitoring mechanism where all of these things that are flying out from the mouths of, politicians and candidates will also be measured, monitored effectively so that the people will have a bond with them in terms of saying, look, these are your promises. How are you getting to that point? And when they win, how do they implement that? Who comes back to monitor, to measure? you know, with a lot of graphics and all of that, how they were implemented, how those people, you know, their commitments were put into place. It's quite easy to make commitments, very easy. But implementation is where I am looking at. In terms of commitments to reduce importation, in terms of commitment to shore up the industrial sector, in terms of commitments to also shore up the agricultural sector so that it can provide raw material, not only for consumption, but raw material to the industries. And that's the only way we can also bring about, you know, employment. And by the time employment generation kicks up, then the economy will be looking up too. And then the GDP will be rising. And then what, you know, the statistics, you know, that, you know, the comparative statistics that came up here with Ghana and Nigeria will also be looking up. And I've also seen that in terms of governance, we also need to have some steps towards good governance, towards provision of facilities, towards provision of infrastructure. And I think once these things are done, we are going the way to you know, stabilizing the sectors that are key, which you call the real sector.
All right, Ken Okoha, thank you very much. Back again to Yeshua Walio here with us in the Abuja studios. Let's have your take on the economic agenda in the course of the campaigns and how any of the parties that wins might therefore have on its hands a certain kind of economy to manage. Subsidy is already one of the issues. Privatization of NNPC is another. Then, of course, you also have a new minimum wage that is coming up against the background of security challenges in the country, you know, in different parts. Impact on agriculture has also been identified. Less is heard these days about solid minerals and the benefits derivable therefrom.
When you look at the target point of the Nigerian debate group, they were just targeting the candidates. But I thought it should go beyond candidate, it should go to the parties. It is obvious that a candidate you fielded may not live to see. But if it is the political parties that are marketing all these philosophies, it will be more to the economy. And also it will be more partisan. And I think looking at the fact that there is a lot of options, the emphasis is just to create more employment in an economy that has so much number of population up to about 200 billion and the population growth of about 3%. So it is good for political parties to sit down carefully, look at the economy, not just allowing the central bank it's only to be determining the rate at which the businesses will be operating. That is one. Two, it has also look at the issues that is affecting the economy, especially security. When security is mentioned, there are security challenges everywhere in the world. But the peculiar nature of our own security will not allow sectoral growth, especially agriculture. About 2 weeks ago, on my way to Sokoto, we were blocked by thuggery. These are not bandits. We are just lucky to escape. So there is need to have financial literacy, political literacy, and it is a responsibility of political parties. So, but I think what I don't like carefully is the issue of selling an NPC as a campaign agenda. I don't like it for many reasons. One, we are battling with subsidy. Two, we are trying to see the capacity of our own refining, the refining capacity, so that we can contain the bridging costs. That is what is suffering the economy, the bridging costs. We have this product. Countries that we similar the same economic models, Venezuela, Iran, and others, they are having refining capacity. Why not Nigeria? And also the pricing policy. You know, the purchasing power parity is not helping the common man in Nigeria, because most of what we consume is coming from abroad, not only the PMS. So if the purchasing power parity continue to increase as a result of exchange rate, the same consumer, his powers will be eroded and if powers of consumers is being eroded simultaneously with some policies. You find a situation where even if you are employed, your income may not readily be to sustain you. And that is why the minimum wage bill, labor, for instance, now that they are very lucky to have a consent of the National Security Council on the minimum wage, where 30,000 naira has been adopted and 27,000 naira also at the same.
That's the Council of State.
Council of State, sorry. So it's not now the NAC should not just go into strike. Strike is killing an economy, and investors don't like to hear word strike. So also the labor itself has to be more careful in trying to fight or to struggle for its own benefit. But the right point to go now, since, like you rightly mentioned, the minimum wage is now transmitted to National Assembly, the entire labor should go to National Assembly for negotiation. And if they go for negotiation, it is also going to be good for our own economy. Those stakeholders, the legislators, the executive arm of government, to facilitate the payment so as to avoid any industrial arrest. And that is why I wanted to have political parties to be addressing this issue. Comrade Adams Oshomale, who was formerly in the labor union, now is holding a political party. I'm expecting him to do more than what he is doing. And at the same time, the opposition party, being somebody who is the political party, you know, the irony of the two political parties is that one fielded a former military, one fielded a former custom official, one is familiar with business, one is familiar with security. So the labor, the security of the state has to do with the stability of the economy and the stability of policies that affect the economy.
Mr. Yoshua, we're running out of time. Mr. Yi, I have a question for you. Are we expecting an economic and government shutdown 23 days to the election? Are we expecting a shutdown?
I can't see a possibility of that. It's not in the horizon at all. What I see is an organized march, you know, towards February 16. And I am not perturbed. You know, I feel, perhaps I'm not perturbed, perhaps because I can compare with others. I can compare with 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015. If you have not been in Nigeria in the last 12 months, and you're just coming in, and you were in Nigeria in 2014, you won't even feel there is an election anywhere. Even the quantum of posters being pasted is reduced. You know, the tension, except, of course, we media, you know, we try to drum issues, you know, sometimes out of proportion. Except for that, you won't feel much tension in the air. And I think that is how election should be. And I hope that after 2019 election, we are hoping for a credible election, a peaceful election, a new template, you know, an electionary campaign would have evolved.
All right. Niyi Akinsiju, financial and investment analyst, we'd like to thank you for being on Good Morning Nigeria again today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And appreciation also to Yoshua Aliu, who's an economist, joining us today. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you very much.
From Lagos, we had two guests. Ken Okoha, who is National President of Nigerian Traders Association. Thank you for your time and for your comments. And also appreciation to Mr. Johnson Chukwu, a financial analyst who joined us along with Ken from our Lagos Network Studios. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's go over now to our sports desk.
Mountain of Fire Ministries Football Club, MF